Welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. So today we're going to be doing something completely different. Basically what I've done is I've created a PowerPoint that shows underwater structure and underwater layouts, and I'm going to show you exactly how the bass set up. I'm going to show you the difference between active and inactive bass, schools, and stuff like that. So this is definitely something you don't want to miss. Now, I'm not planning on doing these types of presentations all the time, but this week I'm not going to be able to get on the lake. I've got a lot of family stuff going on. So I wanted to do something a little bit different, bring y'all something different. Hopefully this presentation will kind of give you a little more insight of what's going on your lake, on your river, your blueback herring lakes. It doesn't matter. This applies to them all. So stay tuned. This is something you don't want to miss. Okay, guys, so this image that you're seeing right here, this is basically an image that you would see on your typical lake, on your river system. It doesn't really matter. Just picture it like this, okay? We've got just a waterway on all four sides. We have got just this huge bridge that stretches across. So your big lakes is definitely going to have these types of bridges, even some small lakes. But what we're going to focus on here is the structures and stuff that's around. So basically, we've got a hard bottom, which has got all this rock down here across the bottom where you see my blue line. And then we've got a school of fish right here. We've got a school of bass right here. And we've got a school of bass right here. And then we have shad, shad, and shad. Okay. Now, typically, people will think, okay, well, the fish are just positioned on these pillars for whatever reason. So you would just target these fish because you see them there. But the biggest thing is, I want you to ask, why are these fish here? Why would these fish be here? So look all the way over here to the right and you see the sun. Okay. The sun is positioned this way and it's going to be hitting, well, that's a horrible arrow. But anyways, the sun's going to be hitting the bridge right here, and then the pilings from this side, right? So it's going to be casting a shadow from right here down, shadow from right here down, shadow from right here down, and a shadow from right here down, just the whole underside of this bridge, right? So with that being said, understand that these fish are positioning themselves in the shadows. Why would they do that? Some people will tell you it's because they're just trying to stay out of the sun, or I've heard so much crap of the reason why fish get in shade, but it's not necessarily just to get out of the sun. It's that they are harder to see. They are a predator. They're looking to ambush their prey, whether it's getting behind something or it's just hiding in something, whether it's a simple shadow or anything to camouflage themselves with their environment. So, all right, let's look at the first set of fish right here on our left. So we've got this school of bass right here. Now, they're positioned close to cover. They're not just suspended out here in the open. So we automatically know these are catchable fish. We've got a school of shad right above them right here. And this is how we know that these are catchable bass. They're close to cover. They've got shad close to them. They're grouped up pretty close together, and they're not just suspended out in the open. They're close to something. What they'll do is they'll come up, they'll ambush the shad, and then they'll push back down to the cover to hide or camouflage themselves to catch another group of shad off guard, or either they will chase the shad until they're gone. So, that being said, understanding that, let's move on to the next school, which is this school right here. Okay. And then we've got shad right up above this school. Now, these bass are positioned up against cover once again. Okay, so these bass will do one or two things. These more than likely are going to be the most aggressive school of bass. So we've got one pillar right here, and we've got a school right here, and we've got a school right here. But these in particular on the right hand side is going to be the most aggressive. And how do we know that? These fish are positioned close against cover. They've got a school right up above them. So they are going to be feeding on these fish, these shad right here in particular, until they push. Okay. Now, before they push, they had to have traveled this way or this way. More than likely, they've traveled this way if the fish are positioned this way. simply because these shad are going to come across right here. These bass are going to be hiding behind the pillars of the bridge, and they're going to push up and ambush at the same time. So what they're doing is they're getting a double bite. So they're going to push up on these right here after they come around and feed on these. Once this school right here moves out, they're going to push this way. These fish are going to push back down around the pillar. This school of shad that just got off of these fish, these bass in particular, has pushed these shad this way. Okay. And then when they come back around, these fish are back in position to come up and feed again on whatever comes across this line, basically. Now, with that being said, these fish are going to be pushing the shad this way, okay, over here where these shad are. So let me reset this real quick. So these shad are going to be pushing up over here. Now, we do have a school of bass right here. Now, I'm going to ask you this. You ain't got to comment down below or anything, but I want you to answer to yourself. Are these fish catchable? 1, 2, 3. Answer it in your head. No. Okay. Or well, yes and no. Okay, suspended fish are catchable. I do catch suspended fish all the time. That's one of the things I'm known for on Smith Lake is catching inactive fish that are suspended. But I will say it is tougher, and there's no reason to target these in particular fish right here when you've got fish right here that are active and fish that are right here active. Okay, now unless you're just wanting to practice on suspended fish to get better at catching suspended inactive lethargic fish. But how do we know these fish are not active? They're not positioned close to cover. Okay, they're not positioned close to the bottom up against this cover, so they're not using any kind of camouflage. These fish are just lethargic. They're not ready to eat yet. So, with that being said, there's a few things we can take from this. Pay attention to one, are these fish positioned close to cover? Okay. Two, is there any bait? If there is bait, what direction is the bait moving? You don't have to have panoptics or any kind of live sonar to understand where the fish are moving and so on and so forth. You just need to pay a little bit more attention to your graph. Get used to your graph. You can watch all the videos in the world about how to use your electronics, but until you sit down, take the time and practice with them, you're not going to get any better with them. Unfortunately, you may get a little bit better, but you're not going to get a top tier level to where you're just understanding all the time what's going on your graph. Okay, so there's always settings that has to be tweaked and stuff like that, so keep that in mind. All right, so the next image is pretty similar. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I've basically just blocked off both sides. Okay, so pretend this side right here is land and this side right here is land, so we got a very narrow bridge. Okay, we got two sides, one pillar in the middle, one up against the bank and another one up against the bank. Okay, so this is typically going to apply to your smaller lakes and your river systems, a lot of river system channels and stuff like that that are smaller. So just be aware of that. So what we're looking for again is active and inactive fish. Okay, so we've got schools of shad on both sides here. This side over here, these shad are kind of positioning close to the bank pillar, okay? And these bass are positioned close to the pillar, close to the bank, and they are grouped up tight together, and they're right below the shad, so they're looking to feed up. So these are active fish once again. These bass over here, once again, are suspended. They're not on any type of cover, ready to ambush or anything like that. Although there is bait above them, they've probably been eating, like I talked about a couple videos ago, especially this time of year. Their metabolisms are super slow. Okay, so once they get to eating so much, they're not burning as many calories basically as they typically would. So they're not looking to just eat. They'll eat, and then they're not so hungry, and then they'll quit eating. Okay, so it's that simple. These fish that are out here in the middle of nowhere doing nothing, they're lethargic. They're not going to eat. The fish that are positioned close to cover, that are ready to ambush and feed up, they are going to feed up. These are the fish you want to target on this side right here. Okay, so let's talk about another scenario. So this scenario, basically, imagine this is a channel swing, okay? So right here's the water line that runs up against the bank. Here's the bank, obviously. We've got sunlight right here. Our boat could be positioned anywhere out towards, the middle of the water, okay? So wherever the middle of the channel is, back towards me. But this is going to be the bank that slopes straight down. Um, off of the bank of the channel swing. So when I say channel swing, I'm talking about the channel that curves around, okay? So that type of channel. So this is the curve that you would fish, okay? So we know we've got A, rocks, we've got grass, and we've got shad, okay? And we've got bass. So here's the big key feature. These bass are 100% catchable. They're sitting in cover around rocks, around grass, and they're waiting to feed. We've got the shad moving this way on the channel swing. So they're going to be traveling right along through here, uh, just making their rounds, eating little microorganisms and stuff like that. So, with that being said, what do we need to do? Okay, so if we know the bass are here, if we understand that the bass are right here, and we do have shad, we know that, and they're traveling. We need to position our boat in the opposite direction. So I want to position my boat in this direction right here where I'm making that blue mark on the edge, okay? The reason for that is I can cast up this way, and then once I cast up that way, I can bring my bait back this way to mimic the direction of the shad. So this comes into play where I was talking about mimicking the exact size of the bait and mimicking the colors and stuff like that of the bait, or the bait fish, whatever they're feeding on, crawfish, it doesn't really matter. But either way, this really comes into play because these bass right here, 90% of the time that are on the channel swings is going to be focused on a specific type of shad and crawfish. So with the crawfish, it's going to be similar to the shad. You may need to play around with the colors a little bit. So you may need to go to a super bright red crawl. You may need to go to an orange crawl. You may need to go to a blue crawl color. It all depends on what the crawfish are eating in that specific area that changes the color in the crawfish. So if you're unlearned about how crawfish change colors, just go to Google and type in, why and how and stuff like that, and it'll explain everything. It's a good 30-40 minute read. You should have it down pat pretty good. Less than that, maybe. It just depends on how much digging you want to do. But simply position your boat in the opposite direction of whichever way the shadow are going. We're going to cast up to where they're traveling from and bring our bait back. Okay, so that's going to mimic the exact motion of the shad that these bass are targeting. It's going to mimic the exact motion of, you ain't really got to worry about the crawfish because the crawfish are just kind of going to be doing their own thing, diddle-daddling, wherever. So that's not a huge deal. But if you're mimicking a shad pattern, this is very, very important. We want to play close to cover. So if we're fishing specifically grass, that's, I don't know, we'll just say 8 foot. Okay. I want to fish with a crankbait that's going to get down. If the top of the grass line is 8 foot, I want to fish with a crankbait that's going to be 8 foot because I want that crankbait ticking the top of the grass, okay? Because it's going to come right over the top of these fish and it's going to cause them to react, okay? So they may not even be willing to eat your bait, but it's going to cause them to react. It's like throwing a hot potato at somebody, okay? So that's a little simple presentation that, you can practice on any of your home lakes, okay, or river systems. All right, so first off, I want to say, do not make fun of my dock that I've drew right here. They did not have a dock for me to put in the image. So just know that this goofy looking thing right here is a dock. Okay. Yeah, and I'm not good at drawing with a mouse. So either way, let's talk about how the fish would set up on this dock. One of the simplest things that we can understand is sunlight, okay? So we've got to predict on which way the shade pattern is going to go. So the sunlight shining down this way, towards this dock right here, and it's going to be hitting the dock and casting a shadow this direction, okay? So, more than likely, the fish that are active are going to be positioned right up under that shade line on this cover. So they're using shade, they're using grass, they're using rocks, and we've got shad right here that are more than likely swimming in, they're swimming out, they're swimming in, they're swimming out. Why are they swimming in and why are they swimming out? That's a big question you need to ask. Well, these little things right here that the bass love to eat are coming in here and eating little microorganisms that may be on the docks, maybe on the grass or whatever, but they're going to swim up and eat this stuff. Okay, so the shad are getting their bite and the bass are getting their bite. It's just a simple ecosystem. Um, but either way, we've got bass positioned close to cover. Okay, so we got bass positioned close to cover, all this cover right here, and then we know we've got shad moving in and out. So how would we position ourselves to catch these fish? So if we understand the shad are moving from outside to inside, we want to position our boat either directly in front of the dock, off to the side of the dock, on either side, and we're going to want to cast every which way that we can, okay? So we want to try to mimic these fish, these shad trying to get in and get out, okay? So this is where like your wacky style rigs and stuff like that's really going to shine, your swim jigs and stuff like that that you can skip, your chatterbaits, or as I like to call them, the thunder cricket. But this is where they're really going to shine because you can skip these baits up under these areas and then mimic them trying to erratically get away. Now, with it being colder weather, you don't necessarily want it being super erratic, but as you know, the season progresses and it starts getting warmer, you're going to want that real fast paced power fishing type movement. But either case, these are 100% catchable fish. One of the easiest ways to find bass and shad under docks is using your side imaging. So here's the thing I need people to understand. Your boat dealerships and stuff are going to try to talk you into getting a side imaging and down imaging. When I say down imaging, I mean down imaging, not 2D sonar, but side imaging, down imaging sonar on the front of your boat and on your console. Now, on your console, yes, 100% go with that. There's no reason that you shouldn't have side and down imaging and 2D sonar at your console. But at the front of your boat, it does not make any sense because you need to be moving at a constant of either 3+ miles an hour to get a consistent view. So now, if you're going to troll real fast, past these docks, well, I say real fast. I mean, trolling motor at 3 miles an hour is fast. So if you're going to troll at 3 miles an hour past these docks and try to get a good reading, then go for it. But I'm not going to waste my time shutting off the motor, getting down, putting my trolling motor down, and then just cruising wide open on the trolling motor, killing my batteries, just trying to get a view. Okay, I'm going to cruise through the front of the docks. I'm just going to cruise right past it and then use my side imaging. Now, a good thing to always remember is on your side imaging, make sure whatever depth you're at, you want to do times 3. So if I'm sitting in 5 foot and I'm using my side sonar, then I'm going to set it times 3. You would do 15, but either way, I wouldn't go no less than 25 feet on left or right. Okay, if the fish are suspended, you're going to see the dots out in the side imaging, but just a good roundabout. Always remember, like if you're at 10 foot deep and you're cruising down the bank and you're running your side imaging, multiply that by 3, that's 30. So we're going to set it on both sides to 30. Okay, that's going to give me all the area that I need on my sonar to be able to see very well what's to the left and what's to the right. Now, here's another little key thing. If you're just looking on the left side of your boat and you're running a Humminbird unit, don't set your side imaging to where it's showing on the right side. If you haven't saw how I do this, look at my Humminbird tips and tricks video. You can set it to where you're just looking to your left, and then you're going to get a lot more screen to see what's going on your left, so you can see rocks, grass, bait, bass, everything a lot better. Shadows, it's going to become a lot more visible to you as an angler, and it's going to save you a lot of time. All right, so another thing I want to talk about, this is going to be just like your simple hump. out in the middle of your lake or river, okay? And then your ditch, okay? So this is going to be your ditch, okay? Obviously, because it's going down and then up, okay? And then this is going to be your hump right here. And then this is just going to be the bottom of the lake that travels out to the main channel, okay? So out in the Never Ever Land, okay? Where you would typically be driving. So let's talk about this. We've got bait in this area, so we know, hey, there's bait, so we definitely need to look for fish. So let's say we get on our sonar, we're scanning, and we notice there's bass here, we notice there's bass here, and we notice there's bass here. Now, which ones would you not want to target? It would be these bass right here, simply because these fish are in the ditch, but they're not positioned anywhere on anything to ambush a predator. These fish are just suspended lethargic fish. They're not going to be looking to eat. So you can basically rule out those fish. We want to target the other fish over here, okay? This is going to be our best odds of catching a fish is the fish on our left-hand side. So these fish right here that are positioned on rocks, grass, you notice that they're not positioned here, they're not positioned right here, they're positioned right here. And why is that? Simply because they have covered the ambush, okay? They've got grass, they've got rocks, they've got everything they need, hard bottom. They've got everything they need to ambush, okay? So they're going to be sitting here looking straight up and waiting for bait to come across right here, and these fish are going to come up and then they're going to feed, okay? Or it could be one of those real cloudy days and the shad could move down here and be swimming in this direction right here, in and out, in and out, in and out, just like that. So if they're doing that, then the bass are still in a great spot to eat, okay? So either way, these bass are going to be positioned on the areas that where they have the most cover. Now, let's talk about these fish down here. Same thing. Are these catchable fish? Absolutely, they are catchable. But the more aggressive fish are going to be these right here. These could be simply spotted bass looking to feed up more often, okay? These could be bigger largemouth that just do not feed up as often. So it depends on what you're targeting. So let's just say this right here is three big largemouth, 5+ pound fish, okay? All three of them, 5+ pounds. So this is, we'll just say they're all 5 pounds. So this is a 15-pound bag. And then we've got four here that's a 15-pound bag. Me personally, I would target these fish right here. And then once you target these fish, work on targeting these fish, okay? Because we know that these fish are more catchable because they're more aggressive. They're positioned in a more aggressive manner, okay? These fish are not necessarily. More than likely, these big largemouth that live under these spots right here, these spots are coming up, popping the bait, and the bait that they stun or kill, but they do not eat, these little bait fish are going to just fall straight down here, and then these big largemouth are just going to come up and just gobble up the dead ones, okay? So, out of this image, understand the sun. Well, I didn't put the sun in this one, but the sun would actually be over here, and it would be shining this way, and it would be casting a shadow over this area. Now, let's say the sun's over here. Doesn't matter. More than likely, this is going to be early in the morning, so it's not going to matter at all. These fish are still going to position right here, okay? So, be aware of that. These fish are close to cover and close to the bait. More than likely, they're more aggressive. These fish are further away from the bait, but they're positioned in a way that they would eat. They're close to cover where they can ambush if they need to. So, let's move on. All right, so let's talk about this. This is one of the most notorious areas that people fish, and that's just a simple point. So let's understand this, that this is the point that comes from the bank out to the middle of the lake, and then it drops down, okay? So super simple little setup here. We've got bait here, we've got bait here, we've got bass, 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 bass. Now this right here is when it can get tricky, okay? Because once you're going over your graph, you're driving your boat through here, blah, 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 and you see shad, and you see bass, and you see bass, and you see bass, and you're like, oh my lord, I have hit the mother load. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I've got 10 bass right here in this school. I'm fixing to tear these jokers a new one. All these fish right here are catchable except these. And why are they not catchable? Simply, they're suspended. They're not holding tight to cover, to ambush, or anything like that. These fish right here, more than likely, either just come from feeding up or catching the dead ones once again that the other fish have been targeting that they didn't finish off. Okay, so these fish down here are lethargic, and they're not necessarily looking to feed up. They'll hit something if it comes right by them, but these are going to be more difficult to catch. Okay, they're not going to be super aggressive, just trying to tear your whole bait apart. Okay, these right here are, and these right here are. These specifically are what we call the nomads on the lake. These are the bass that are just out in the middle of nowhere, um, just eating. Okay, these shad, as soon as they see the shad, they're going to be chasing up and just busting the top of the water. These are pretty easy to catch, but these are typically the smaller fish. So, me personally, I would be targeting these fish right here on your typical lake. On a blueback herring lake, you're going to have a mixture. So you're going to have like the spotted bass that'll be out here that are very, very active and are typically larger fish. They're just super active fish. And then you're going to have the other ones that are positioned close to cover that are still very active. So on a blueback herring lake, this kind of applies to both of them. You're going to catch both of these schools right here. This one, not so much. You're really going to have to hunker down and pay attention to what you're doing when you're trying to catch these. So these are the ones you definitely want to focus on. So let's talk about these fish. This school of bass up here. Are these catchable? Yes, 100%. These fish right here are catchable. They're close to cover. Oh, we've got the sun beaming down this way. These fish more than likely are going to be positioned in the grass to stay in as much shade as they can. They're going to be backed up off of the point. They've got a little bit more of an angle. On the shadow of which way the sunlight's casting it. So they're going to come up and feed on these particular shad right here and stuff like that. So all these fish that are holding tight to cover, well, not those right there, but these fish that are holding tight to cover in any situation or anywhere you're at, they're going to be the ambush predators. They're going to be the ones that you're going to want to target, okay? They are catchable. It's just a lot of times it comes down to narrowing down exactly what they're eating, the size, the color, everything. And then you've got to get the action correct, which sometimes can be very, very tedious. It just takes a little bit of time, okay? Now, these bass that you see on all your lakes that are nomadic, just out in the open, out feeding, these are typically going to be your smaller fish. They're not a whole lot of concern. Your little jerk baits and flutes and stuff like that, little swim baits, are going to catch these fish. But these are not the ones that I would typically target unless I'm on a blueback herring lake and I see that they are larger nomadic fish than normal, and then I'm going to target them with top water baits and stuff like that and jerk baits. So either way, guys, I hope this video helps you. If it did, let me know down in the comments. And if you like stuff like this, if you like bass fishing, make sure to like, subscribe, follow for more content, because I got you covered when it comes to anything bass fishing. So I'll see you next time.